Yo, welcome to the Horns Up Podcast, your home for all thing Los Angeles Rams. I'm your host, Johan, and this is my co-host, Rune. You can find us on our socials at Rams Nation and Puka Nakua Lover 12. From breaking news to game breakdowns, hot takes, and honest fan reactions, we're here to bring you the highs, lows, and everything in between. If you bleed blue and gold, this is your spot. Rune, why don't you go ahead and get us into our first talking point for today?
All right, so we're talking about a couple of different things today, but I think we're just going to start this one off by, I think, kind of the biggest focal point of like the week. Terrance Ferguson finally signing his rookie contract.
Right. Yeah, that's it's a big deal. I mean, coming out of the draft, I mean, usually all rookies they just, they sign their contract. Some of them will have holdouts here and there, but for the second rounders, I mean, ever since Shamar Stewart on the Bengals, ever since that happened, it's just, it's like what's happening with all these second rounders? Why aren't they signing? But now, I mean, we know now, they want the guaranteed money, they want the good bonus. And as a fan, it's kind of like I don't like it too much because you haven't even played it down yet. I mean, you were good in college, of course. Terrance Ferguson, he was a beast at Oregon, but you haven't even played a down yet. We haven't seen anything out of you. But from the player, I understand it because obviously they want their money as anyone would.
Yeah, and with the guaranteed contracts, that's gotten me pretty mad at the Texans because they started this whole chain of just giving their rookies guaranteed contracts. So
Right.
that really just started like a chain reaction of rookies just, hey, he got a guaranteed contract, why can't I get one? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But uh, I feel like Terrence deserved it. I mean, like you said, he balled out at Oregon, and I think since he was our first pick of our draft. I mean, granted, it was in the second round. Like, he's not
Yeah.
a first round guy, but still, I feel like he deserves to get paid in
Yeah.
guaranteed because what if something does happen? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I didn't think that we'd see anything like any holdouts or him like not signing a contract because I mean, let's be real. He wasn't supposed to be a second rounder. He was probably going to drop to the third, maybe later. But obviously, the Rams, they had a lot of faith in him. They took a leap. They went out and got him. That was their guy. We've heard McVay, we've heard Leslie, we've heard them talk about how Ferguson was their guy. And I think there was even a clip saying that they were thinking about taking him at 26 when we were there, which is that would have been too high. But um, yeah, I don't think he would have sat out anyway. I think it was about 83% of the contract guaranteed. So, I mean, it's not the full 100, which I mean, it's a little good side note for the Rams, but I mean, this was gonna happen sooner or later.
Yeah, and a lot of people are not talking about really about the contract is that Terrence, I think, was waiting for maybe the Jalen Ramsey thing to all get situated. You know what I mean?
All right.
But I feel like not trading for him and not having to take on that like $30 million contract that allowed him to get some more money out of his rookie deal, guaranteed money actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's another thing too, us not getting Jalen Ramsey, it leaves the cap more open, more things can happen. And who knows, maybe we're just waiting on like, a big corner later in the season, like during the trade deadline or something, because, the Rams they can afford to take on a big contract right now. We didn't see them go out and sign anyone crazy in free agency other than Devontae Adams. But I mean, yeah, they have their money there. So, we never know what the Rams are up to, especially with McVay and Snead. They like to sneak in and make some moves here and there. But yeah, I mean, it is a good thing knowing that we do have the cap for it.
Yeah, and with those corners, I feel like Snead and McVay, they're being really picky. I remember seeing interest in Chidobe Awuzie. I remember seeing interest in Ramsey and Jair, but that's about it. I don't think the Rams just want to sign any corner to have any corner. I think they're really, you know, they trust our guys right now and Witherspoon and Durant. I don't really trust Akello as like a certified cornerback one.
I understand
I
it.
feel like he can be that, but uh, I don't know. But but yeah, Terrance Ferguson finally signing his rookie contract. That's a really big. That's really good for
Yeah.
the Rams to
Yeah,
do that.
that's the most recent news right now that we have coming from the Rams. Obviously something positive, which is we love to hear. And he's gonna be in the game plan a lot, you know? And
Yeah, and they really like Ferguson. I mean, as you said, they were thinking of taking him at 26,
right.
which like you said, it would have been way too high. But they really trust in Ferguson, and I think having him available to kind of be like behind Higby to learn, that's going to be really good for the offense.
Yeah, that's another good thing too, which will lead us into our next talking point about some of our veterans on the team. Some of our guys, what we can expect from them, especially some of the older guys. And yeah, Tyler Higbee, he's um he's a player that's really loved in the Rams community. He hasn't really ever lived up what he was supposed to be, which was, like a big playmaking tight end. But yeah, I mean, he is a great mentor. I think he'll definitely be great for Ferguson. And it could take a load off of Higbee's shoulders too, because he's always been the only tight end there. Which I mean, now if you're looking at the tight end room, you feel a little bit better knowing that you have a guy like Ferguson there who can take some of the load off of his shoulders. And yeah, Higby, he's a little injury prone now, so he does need he can't be playing every single snap, but Ferguson he could definitely compliment him there, and I think Higby can teach him a couple things.
Yeah, I feel like exactly what you just said. That
Yeah.
Ferguson's really going to benefit from having a guy who's been there in the system before him. But Higby is also going to benefit because he's not going to be taking the mass majority of the workload.
Right. Yeah, Higby, he's always getting banged up, But when he was back last year, he did look good. But I think we can all agree at this point that it's time to kind of get into the new era of the NFL right now. A lot of teams are getting tight ends that can be receiving threats. And some of the best tight ends now, I mean, some of them are good blockers, like George Kittle. Um, you know, that's really the only good blocker I could think of actually in like
Yeah,
the top five tight ends, like the elite guys. But yeah, I feel like we're definitely starting to transition into this new era, especially with Ferguson. I know he hasn't played a snap yet, and we're talking about him, but he definitely has the potential to be the guy that McVay's always wanted.
yeah. And another thing with me about how how the Ferguson pick was actually really good.
Right.
I didn't I didn't want a tight end right there, but I mean I'm biased. I was a really big Jalen Monroe fan, but
Mhm.
another reason why that pick is so good is because if you look at all the good teams, like you look at the Lions, the Niners, if yeah, but a lot a lot of the good teams you see now, there's a good trend there. They have a good tight end who can really just do anything. And I feel like Terrence Ferguson's that kind of guy. I mean, he's not a superstar tight end. I mean, he was definitely a top tight end prospect, top
Yeah.
5, but he can really do anything. He's kind of a jack of all trades. He can block, he can catch, he can do whatever.
Right.
He's not going to be a superstar at any of those, but he can do literally anything the tight end position has to offer at a good enough level.
Yeah, and you've got to feel at least better than you did last year about our tight end room. I don't know if we were last, but we were near last in like tight end production last year out of all teams, which McVay, he's always wanted to get a good tight end. He's taken chances on tight ends, he's drafted tight ends, and now he's finally got his guy. A couple seasons ago, the 2023 through 2024 year, I thought Davis Allen, he was starting to like take a step up. He was gonna be the next guy behind Higbee, but we saw he didn't really play too much last year, which is probably an indication of how the team feels on him. So, yeah, Terrance Ferguson, he's here, definitely making the tight end room look a lot better, especially from what it was last year. And we should definitely see him get some production this year.
Yeah, and going into detail about another veteran because I know this segment right now it's kind of all about veterans. I just kind of want to talk about Devontae a little bit and kind of how I hear a lot of people say, A, he's washed, B, you traded Cup because he's old and then got a guy who's a year older,
Right.
but I, I don't really think that's the case. I mean, you look at Cup has played, I think, one full season his entire career. And
Mhm.
that full season, I mean, it was the greatest wide receiver single season of all time.
Right.
But his production is just his production was up here the Super Bowl season, and ever since then,
Yeah, it's just been
gone
plummeted.
down. And I think for Devontae, he really hasn't had as much of a fall off as Cup, and Devontae's going to be reliable,
Right.
and Devontae's not going to be just the single guy like the bona fide wide receiver one. No, you got the king Puka Nakua leading the way, and then you got Devontae who can just take over in the red zone.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think we can all say, I don't think we would have said this back then, but I think now that there's been some time to kind of cope with it, I think um yeah, I think we can agree that Devontae Adams was definitely an upgrade from Cooper Kupp. I feel like I was definitely starting to see where the direction was with Cooper Kupp towards the end of the year last year. Once we had that Niner game, that boring Thursday night or Monday night, whatever, that horrible game where Cooper Kupp had zero receptions and everyone was flaming him. I think ever since like around that time and on, it was just all right, like we know Cooper Kupp, he's on his way out. And then especially in the playoffs, I mean, Cooper Kupp, he's supposed to be this reliable guy, great hands, possession. He's gonna get you a lot of targets. But I mean, we saw from this past season that Matthew Stafford's kind of leaning more towards Puka's way.
Yeah, and I feel like Puka, I mean, he's the young guy. He's going to get the majority of the catches. I mean, you could even look at last year. I mean, granted, Cup was out. I mean, so was Puka, but Cup was just limited production. I mean, he just really couldn't do it all. He's always been known for being this really good route runner. He kind of slowed down on that, not as much separation, and that's really what made him good. It's just he had some of the best separation of a wide receiver just in the league, and I think once you separate that from him and the fact that he's getting up there in age is just I think it was time to move on from him.
Yeah, a lot of people, I mean, including myself, were, pretty sad when Cooper Kupp was gone, especially because we didn't know what was coming. I would have loved to see Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, and Puka, but that wasn't happening. As we
That
yeah, that
maybe we
would have
could
been
have
so,
that in a perfect world, but I was pretty sad when Cup left because obviously Super Bowl MVP, going to go down in Rams history as one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver of all time. I think give this guy a couple more years and he'll be up there, but
yeah,
Uh, I think the signing of Devontae kind of drained all my sadness out of my system because Devontae, I mean, in this day and age, he's a better player than Cup. He's gonna do more. He's gonna be more reliable, and he's really Puka for as long as he's been in the league. I mean, 2 seasons, but Puka he's never been known as this big touchdown scorer. I mean, I think his rookie year he only scored
like
5 or 6 touchdowns, and
Puka.
that's not a lot for a wide receiver. But Devonte Adams, however, he's kind of the opposite of Puka. I mean, Devontae's not going to get a, a crap ton of receptions going down the field, but once you get into those final like 20, 30 yards to
Right.
the end zone, he's going to get almost anything and he can score.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it kind of reminds me of when I feel like it's a common thing. I mean, I feel like McVay always wants to have two good wide receivers and they can kind of like play off of each other. Since McVay's got here, we've always had at least two like pretty good receivers. I mean, even in the beginning, we had Cooper Kupp, we had Brandon Cooks, we had Sammy Watkins. Like we always had these high production, pretty good receivers, and McVay's always like two of them. So when Coop wasn't really carrying his weight last year, and when he wasn't getting any targets, and he was starting to fall off. I mean, all the attention just goes to Puka. And then, our tight end room, as we were talking about earlier, wasn't too good, so they don't help. So yeah, Devontae, he should definitely help Puka a lot. I feel
Yeah,
like it's gonna be hard as a defense when you have to guard, not only Puka, but also Devontae. And then, I mean, some of our other guys that we have in there, like Tutu, he should have a pretty good year. Terrance Ferguson, as we were saying. Like, yeah, like this offense is now it's not just like a two-headed monster, a three-headed monster with, Stafford, Kyron, and Puka. Now we have a little more options, a little more flexibility.
yeah. And speaking of Cup leaving, the Rams really are no stranger to shipping veteran guys off. I mean, you look at Kurt Warner going to, did he go straight to Arizona?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have Kurt Warner going to the rival Cardinals, and who do the Rams bring in? The Rams bring in. They brought in Mark Bulger,
Right.
who I didn't get the privilege of watching, but
Yeah, me neither, but
yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, and then now Cup getting released because the Rams couldn't find a trade partner.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think that's another sign of Cup, not being as good of a guy to have anymore because the Rams were looking for a trade partner, and even those wide receiver needy teams like the Chargers, like the Patriots, like they showed interest, but they never, they never ended up trading for him, which would have been nice because you would have gotten some extra draft capital. But
I
I
definitely
mean,
wanted something in return for Cup, but I mean, if you've been like following this team, I mean, if you know this front office, they're not good at trading away their own players. They don't get as much value as they want. I feel like they're really player friendly. They send them to wherever they want to go. And they're just fine with that, which, it's good as a team, if these guys want to come back in the future or it's just good for player relationships, but I feel like you kind of have to get at least something for a guy like Cooper Cup. You don't see a name like that get released usually. If anything, you'll see a team, just they'll take on his salary and they'll give him a fifth rounder, a fourth rounder. Yeah.
yeah, and speaking of player relationships, that's going to bring us into our next topic, and that is Jared Goff throwing
Oh,
a little bit of shade at the Rams organization on
Paul Goff strikes again.
Netflix. Netflix is the quarterback. I actually I gave the quarterback a watch. I watched all of season one, all of season two. Great show. I mean, it goes in depth about quarterbacks, but it shows like behind the scenes, like what they do during the game, during practices, during off season workouts. It's
Pretty
a
good
great show.
inside look for like people that don't really know what goes on and they just think, oh,
Yeah,
okay, they just show up, practice, and then play.
exactly. But I remember watching. I think it was episode one, and then just there was a whole kind of there's a whole I call it a segment. I don't know, but it's Jared Goff just kind of talking about his time with the Rams and but mainly how it ended. He said that there was no maturity from the Rams organization, and I feel like, and there wasn't there wasn't as much as a player like him would hope, and he deserved some more what's the word? He deserved more closure
Right.
on the thing. I mean, Sean McVay even came out and said I could have handled it way better, but I mean, as a player like Goff, who is who is coming off almost no, success. He had just came off
Like a
uh,
wild card
playoff
loss.
loss to the Packers in the wild card round of 2020.
Yeah.
But as a player like him, you really can't feel like you're going to be treated like a franchise great. Like he was. I mean, don't
He
get
he
me
was
wrong.
definitely important because he was, we invested a lot in him. We gave up a lot of draft capital to get up to number one and take him. And a lot of Rams fans, we felt like he was the guy. He was never amazing, but there was times where Jared Goff showed that he had potential to be a top 10 QB. But I feel like, the way that he kind of like talked shade on the Rams right there. Um, all respect to Jared Goff, but he couldn't get the job done. So that's really the reason he was gone. And we saw what happened once we did get a guy who couldn't get the job done. He's he's taken us to the playoffs. I think every year except the second year after the year after the
I
Super
mean,
Bowl.
that year was literally a train wreck. I mean, injuries left, right.
Yeah, you can't really blame Stafford for that one, but
No, no,
I
I
feel
he
like
didn't even play the whole season.
right? I know we had a like UFL MVP Bryce Perkins and
Oh yeah, Bryce Perkins. I remember my first Rams game I ever went to. The QB it was Cardinals versus Rams, and the QB duel was John Wolford versus Colt McCoy.
wow.
It was awful, and it wasn't even like a Week 18 sit starters game. It was smack dab in the middle of the regular season. I mean, it was
Wow.
awful. It's probably the worst sporting event I've ever attended, and to make it worse, the Rams lost. But I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, but going back, like backtracking to what you said about how the Rams invested a lot in Cup, the Rams actually to pay Jared Goff to reward him for, essentially nothing. You let some key guys walk
right.
from that Super Bowl team against the Patriots, but I feel like Jared Goff, just talking a little bit about that train wreck of a Super Bowl, I feel like Jared Goff did not play up to par for as big of a game as that is. I don't know where the game. I think it was it New Orleans? I don't know, but the Rams flew across the nation, went to the highest stage in football to
Right.
kick a fucking field goal. It just doesn't make sense to me. And
Watching that it was definitely like a humbling experience.
yeah,
I mean, he can't complain too much. It is Tom Brady. He is the GOAT. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to make this too much about like the past and Jared Goff, but Jared Goff definitely had his chances. Jared Goff, McVay gave him everything he wanted. He gave him, he gave him a pretty good O-line. Whitworth was here. We had a few pretty good guys like Roger Saffold, Rob Havenstein. Jared Goff, he had really good weapons too, and the defense was pretty good, during that time. So Jared Goff, he had his chances, but yeah. That's gonna go ahead and wrap everything up here today. I hope you guys enjoyed what we talked about, pretty good talking points, from Terrance Ferguson to some of our veteran guys and what we can expect from them. And then right now, as we were talking about, Jared Goff, a little bit of a QB drama going on. But yeah, I'm your host, Johan. You can find me at Rams Nation on Instagram and TikTok. This is Rune up here. You can go ahead and shout out your socials.
you can find me on Instagram as Puka Nakua Lover 12, all lowercase.
All right. Looks like that's going to do it today. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. And remember, whose house? Rams house.
And